Okay, Boker Tov. Today's daf is Tzadi Vav 96. We are a little behind. We pick up on the top third of Tzadi Hamlet Bet by the two dots. We're dealing with a Breita that had three opinions about how to deal with the case of somebody who steals a cow that's pregnant and gives birth, or a sheep that has wool and shears it. And the first position was Rabbi Meir, that you have to give back both the shorn sheep and the cow that had given birth together with the shearings and with the calf. And the Gemara said that even though we hold Shinui is Kone, and you really should own the shearings and pay the difference. But this was a knas. You shouldn't be profiting off of somebody else's stolen off of an object that you stole from someone else. Now the Gemara turns to the positions of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Let's take a look. It's about 10 lines from the top on Tzadi Hamlet Bet. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Gzela chozeres be'eineha. The Gzela goes back in its current state, which could mean you give back the shorn sheep and the cow that had given birth, and you don't pay the difference. But the Gemara understands what this means, is that you actually give it back in the way that you took it. So you do pay the difference. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Roi no sakilu hi rishuma etzlo b'kasa. You assess the value of it, which also means you determine how much it was when you stole it, and that's what you pay. So those both seem to be very similar positions. By the way, neither of them are clear whether you own the sheep. Is the fact that the sheep has been shorn enough of a shinoi in the sheep itself? That remains pretty vague here. But anyway, the Gemara understands that either way, they're both saying you paid for the value when you stole it. So the Gemara says, "My bein ayu." So what's the difference between these two positions? Okay, the question is about the improvement. Let's say you had not shorn it. So let's say, who gets that improved value? Rabbi Yehuda suffered in Nigzel Have, Rabbi Shimon suffered in Gazan Have. So Rabbi Yehuda is of the position that it belongs to the Nigzel, the person who was stolen from. Let me just check Rashi very quickly, make sure I'm saying this right.
Rashi said yesterday that it was Hashta, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Shasa. He said Kamushi Yakshav.
What?
Rashi said yesterday that Beina means Kamushi Yakshav.
Kamushi Yakshav Rekanit Yachzirana V'Hadar Misham make Gizos for Ubar. Yeah, but you pay the difference. Okay. So all right. So anyway, so the Gemara says the difference would be that you haven't shorn it yet. Okay. So that belongs to the Nigzel. So when he says Chozeres be'eineha, it means that had you not yet shorn it, you would have given it back with the increased wool. Let's say it had grown wool since you stole it. That would belong to the Nigzel. Rabbi Shimon suffered Gazan Have, and Rabbi Shimon say no, the Gazan would get that. So that's an interesting idea, that even some type of a small increase in its value in the wool and whatever, that would be yours. What is that? Is that based on Shinoi? Why would the Gazan get it? Like, that seems to be a small enough change, an incremental enough change, and that's pretty strange that Rabbi Shimon would say that belongs to the Gazlan. But the emphasis of Rabbi Shimon that says Chozeres be'eineha is being read here to mean not in the specific scenario discussed in the Breita, but if there was a small increase, growth in the wool, let's say, that would go back with the increase to the owner. That's what Rabbi Yehuda would say.
So Rabbi Meir is talking about the Breita, Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon or not?
Well, they're both saying the same thing, but their positions indicate that there would be a different area that they would be debating. In the case of the Breita, they're saying you pay what it was when you stole it. But the different language indicates that Rabbi Yehuda would say that in some cases you'd give it back even though it had improved, and you would not just pay the value when you stole it. Rav Papa Amar, which is again a shocker. Like, why is this small little increase? I mean, what is that based on? Is that based on Shinoi Konya? Why does he get the fact that now, it's grown some extra wood? Why does that go to the Gazlan? So Tosfos, you see, there's a long Tosfos, and Tosfos basically says that these positions that the Gazlan gets to keep it is really a type of a Takanas Harshavim. It doesn't make sense. It's not a Shinoi Kona. I have it that says this much wool, it grows a little extra wool, all of a sudden that's a Shinoi, and I get the additional wool. So Tosfos says, no. That's because to make it easier for you to return the principal, we let you keep the increase. Okay.
Well, but the payment though, it's very different. It is no.
That's true. There are certain degrees, but to say it in a categorical way that you get to keep the shevach doesn't seem to be a good basis for it. So Tosfos says now that the Gemara is saying they both would hold that, that's basically a takanas harshavim. So if that's true, so both of them are agreeing to pay for it the way it was when it was stolen. If it increases, you, the Gazan, keeps the difference. Okay, again, takanas harshavim. If it gives birth, then you pay for it as it was worth when it was stolen. They both agree basically you're paying what it was worth when it was stolen. So what's the difference? So the Gemara says, here the question is whether you basically keep all of the increase, or do you keep like a portion of it? Okay, because do we figure like, half, a third, that would be the amount you would pay like a, I guess it was land, you'd call it a sharecropper. I don't know what you would call it anyway, but, you would pay somebody who was going to raise your sheep or raise your cows and get them pregnant and have them have kids or whatever. You give them a percentage of the business. Okay, so this is like, not a minimum payment for your services. This is like what you would contract with somebody at. So everybody agrees, like, what are we going to give the Goslin so he feels, it's so funny, to incentivize him to return the thing, so he feels he's at least getting something for his efforts that he now got this cow or this sheep to be worth more. Do you let him keep all the shevach, or do you let him keep a portion of the shevach? Okay, and that's the debate.
See, that I can understand with the beginning of anyway. It just had more will. Well, you do anything.
Well, you grazed it, you cared for it. I mean, you got to take care of it. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Shevel Shagabi Gzela Kule the Goslin Have. It's all the Goslin, and that's the phrase Choseres Be'eineha. You give it back, and Michael, this is sort of the way you wanted to say it. You give it back in exactly the way it was when you stole it, and you keep all of the increase. Okay, that's Choseres Be'eineha. You keep all of the increase. Now, that doesn't mean that you pay back less than it was worth. Okay, you pay it back as it was when it was taken. And so if now you shore it and it's less than it is, you have to make up the difference. But any increase from the way it was when it's taken is all yours. Reb Shimon uses the phrase Yushamin also, you assess its value.
Are you backtracking?
No, did I skip a line?
No.
Rabbi Shimon Savar lemesel l'shlishavia hu deshakil gazan. So when he uses the phrase and says Yorono sukilu shuma, you assess it. So assessing means, okay, it doesn't mean the full amount. You assess the value and you do some function of that amount. So therefore, everybody agrees that you pay it back as it was when it was stolen. If you shore it, you pay the difference. If you haven't shored it, it's still shevach hagabi that's on it. So Rabbi Yehuda says you keep the entire increase, and Rabbi Shimon says you keep a portion of the increase. Yes, Charlie.
So I have a pregnant cow.
Yeah.
I steal it.
Thank you.
It gives birth. I give back.
No. Okay.
I
Yeah.
give back the now non-pregnant cow. What about the calf?
You keep it because of Shinoi Kona.
But it was part of the calf was part of the cow.
So you pay the difference. That's what I've been saying. Everybody agrees you pay the full amount of it was when it was worth. And the question is, do you keep, and if it gave birth or you shore it, everybody agrees you keep that. That's Shinoi Kona. If you have to pay the difference, you'll pay the difference. But otherwise, you pay whatever, But if it just increased and without giving birth, so Rabbi Yehuda says you keep, you're not going to shear it, but you get paid for the full amount of increase. And Rabbi Shimon says you get paid for a portion of the increase. Okay, it's so crazy how nice we're being to the Gazan here. Not enough that the Torah says there's no fine, but he has to get now paid for his efforts. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda said, we did that. Okay, now, Gaza Parvinis Abra Etzel, Yalda. Rachel, this is our Mishnah. Finally, getting back to that. Rachel Vinitana Etzel V'Gazaza. So you stole a cow, became pregnant, gave birth. So went through the full cycle. Or a sheep that it got laden with wool, it was shorn. Okay. You pay back like it was when you stole, and you keep the whole increase because now it's back to the way it was when you stole it. So the Gemara says, Yalda in lo yalda hadra be'ene. It sounds like only because it gave birth do you return it now. Only because it gave birth. Now do you return it as it was when it was stolen, right? So now you're giving back the same thing that you stole, a cow that's not pregnant. Let's say it hadn't given birth. What's the implication of the Mishnah? You stole the cow and it got pregnant. You stole the sheep and it got laden with wool. The implication of the Mishnah would be give the whole thing back, right? It sounds like only because you shore it and maybe there's a shinway on the wool, do you keep the wool. But have you not done that, it sounds like the whole thing goes back, okay? So that's not like we've been saying. So the Gemara says, according to Reb Zvi, that was the debate of Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, whether when it increased, before it was, shorn, does it all belong to the Nigzal or all belong to the Goslin? So according to that version that Reb Yehuda said it all belongs to the Nigzal, how many Reb Yehudi? That's Reb Yehuda. El Rav Papa, the second version, Damar de Goslin Have, everybody says it's the Goslins, and the question is just all of it or part of it. How money? Who is this going like? The implication that had it not been shorn, it got, it developed the wool when you had stolen it, it had been shorn. The implication of the Mishnah is it all goes back. So who is that going like? Lo Reb Yehuda, lo Reb Shimon, not Reb Yehuda, not Reb Shimon. I'm looking at Rav Papa. Rav Papa will say to you, Hu adin afil lo yalda, nami kishas kzela. Really, when the Mishnah says it goes back to the Nigzal, that would be true even had it not yet given birth. And you didn't need Shunoi Kona. Okay? Nami kishas kzela to Mishaleh. The Hadiktani, I'm sorry, did I say that wrong? I feel lo yalda, even had it not given birth, actually, let me say that, I said it wrong. Even had it not given birth, you would have kept the increase. Okay, you would not have given it back. So the same way when it gives birth, you keep the baby in the Mishnah. Had it not given birth, you always would have kept the increase, and you would have only given it back based on the value when you stole it. Okay, Nami kishas delu de Mishaleh. The Hadiktani yalda, so why did the Mishnah say when it gave birth, you get to keep the calf? Which implies before it gave birth, you did not get to keep the increase. I did Nasif Reisha Yalda, Nasif Sefer Nami Yalda. The Reisha was talking about Yalda. Remember, the Reisha said you stole a pregnant cow and it gave birth. So the Sefer was also talking about Yalda when you stole a cow that wasn't pregnant. But the real point is that in the Mishnah, you would always keep the increase, whether you stole it not pregnant and it had now, gotten pregnant, whether you stole pregnant and given birth, whether you stole not pregnant, given birth, you always pay, because that's actually the end line of the Mishnah. The funny thing with this is pointing out is that the Mishnah is missing this obvious case, right? The Mishnah says if you took a stolen cow, a pregnant cow, and it gave birth, you're Mishalem Kishasa Gzela, you keep the baby. You stole a non-pregnant cow, got pregnant, gave birth, you keep the baby, you're Mishalem Kishasa Gzela. This is the rule. You're Mishalem Kishasa Gzela. You're Mishalem like it was. But it didn't tell you the missing case. The case of when you stole it not pregnant, then it got pregnant, and now it's pregnant. Do you get to keep the increase, or do you whatever? So what this is coming down on the side of Zehadin, your Ola Mishalem Kishasa Gzela. So even in that missing case, when it wasn't pregnant and got pregnant, you get to get paid back for the increase, and you only have to pay the owner for that original value. Okay. So that's the principle of Mishalem Kishas Gzela. So now the Gemara says like this. We taught like Rav Papa that everybody agrees the Gazan keeps the increase, and the only question is to what degree. Rav Shimon Omer, at least this clarifies Rav Shimon's position, not Rav Yehuda's. Rabbi Shimon says you get to keep a portion of the increase. Presumably, whether it's a half, a third, or a quarter has to do with whatever the standards are in that locale. I'm Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi says, when I was in the house of Rav Kahana, we asked the following question. Rabbi Shimon who you take half, a third, or a quarter. Gazan, so until now, we've been saying you're paying for the difference, right? He's not going to say, like, I'm going to come and I'm going to shear off, my portion of the wool. Or what are you going to do about the pregnant cow? I'm going to come and I'm going to take a piece of, but here the question is, maybe not. Are you allowed to? I mean, it's just, again, so disturbing and shocking the way the Gazan has rights here. Are you allowed to pay him off for his portion? Or does he have rights? And he says, no, I own 10% of the cow.
I'm not your partner.
I own 50% of the Uber, and when it gets of the fetus, and when it gets born, that calf is going to be half mine. Right? It's like the mafia. It's like, okay, we're partners now. You want your cow back? Fine. Now we're partners in your cow. Anyway, okay, so or do you get to at least just pay him for his efforts? Okay. We concluded from the following statement. 3 people, you assess the increase and you pay them off and they don't remain partners. Okay, now the point here is that we're going to assume this is like it. We're going to assume the shalosh is not a dafka. We're going to assume the fact that he's giving you this example of people that you get to pay off, that the Gazan would also obviously fall into this category. Okay, and these are they, B'chor L'Pashat. Let's say 2 brothers inherit an estate, and because the Bechor gets Pishnayim, right, if there's just 2 brothers for simplicity, he gets 2/3 and the other brother gets 1/3. Now, let's say the Bechor goes, and he plants the field and increases it, and now it's worth $1,000 more than it was before. The halacha is that he does not get 2/3 of that $1,000. Since that was an increase in the value that occurred after, the inheritance took place, they split that increase equally. Okay, so because the estate has yet to be divided, so that's an increase in the estate. It's not like your third increased X 330 and my third included 660. It's that the entire estate increased. How do we divide this new part of the estate? Well, we divide it equally. Okay, so in that case, okay, but the point, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the land 2/3 and 1/3. So now I'm the Bechor. I've got more of the increase because we divided the land 2/3 and 1/3, and the increase was equally distributed. I've got more of the increase than I'm entitled to. Okay, so Charlie, do you get to demand a percentage of this land? No, I'm entitled to pay you off and keep my 2/3 of lands with the full amount of increase and pay you for that extra amount that I took. Okay, so that's the Bechor Leparsha. Ubal Chov L'Lokeach, and a debtor for the purchaser. So the case is that, let me just double check Rashi again. Right. So this was, Michael owed me $1,000. He went in and he sold the field to Charlie. Charlie increased the value of the field $500. I am now going to come and seize that property because actually Michael owed me whatever. Michael owed me $1,500 or whatever it was. I'm going to seize the entire property with the increase. Okay. But Michael says, but you don't have a right to take from me, more than, we're going to explore this in a minute, but you don't have a right to take from me sort of like more than my purchase price. Your lien on that land was only $1,000. That increased $500. That was my input into that land. You don't have rights to that. Okay, but I'm not going to take less of the whole plot of land. I'm going to take the whole plot of land. So Charlie now, though, is entitled to $500 back. That was what he put into the land. That wasn't the original stuff I had a lien on. So there I can pay him the $500 rather than have him remain a partner in the land. That's Baal Chov L'Lokeach. 1 minute. Baal Chov L'Lokeach, Baal Chov L'Yisomim, which is exactly the same thing, except rather than the fact that the creditor sold the land, the creditor died, and I'm taking from the orphans, and they've increased the value. So what they've added to the land is not what I have my liens on. So when I'm taking the land, I have to pay them for their part, but they're not allowed, I have the right to do that. They're not allowed to say, we're not taking your money, we're remaining partners in the land, okay? So the same way all of that is true, and they're all very similar cases. Something that is mine that somebody else increased, okay? And something that's mine that somebody else increased, that person, though, I'm allowed to get rid of that person by paying them off, okay? So in this case also, the Gazan increased it. Reb Shimon says he has a certain, he gets some money out of that, but I'm allowed to pay him off. Okay, he can't insist that he remains a partner. Yes, wait, Charlie had his hand up.
Just a quickie. Any significance fact they're using the word damim rather than kesef?
Damim is Aramaic, kesef is like Mishnaic language, so I think it's just because it's like,
okay.
It's Aramaic, yeah.
So it's not really like mafia extortion then, because it's like somebody who made money for you,
right?
And you're giving them a commission.
Exactly. Now I never asked them to do this for me or whatever, right. But right, exactly. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. Okay, so presumably that's the case. Now the Gemara says, is that really true? In this case here, when I'm going out collecting from Charlie, and I had was worth $1,000, I had a lien on the property, and now I have to pay Charlie for the amount that he increased the value. That the Baal Chov gets to collect the increased value. If that debt was $1,500, thank you very much, Charlie, for increasing the value of the land. I had a lien on that land, and now I'm going to take the whole thing. I don't owe you anything. By the way, there's a middle position, which is not that I don't owe you anything or that I get to take it all, but I pay you for your efforts, right? There's a middle position there. But anyway, here you have these contradictory statements. One of Shmuel says that I have to reimburse Charlie for the increase that he made in the land, and the other is that I get to take the whole thing. I'm related lo kasha, but kan b'shevach hamigia l'ktefayim, kan b'shevach she'en migia l'ktefayim. Has the increase reached your shoulders or not? Now, what does that mean? So Rashi says migia l'ktefayim means like the wheat is very high and it's ready to be harvested. So if the wheat is ready to be harvested, then it's really not seen conceptually as part of the land anymore. Then I'm really just taking something which conceptually is now Charlie's wheat. Imagine he had already harvested it. Certainly I wouldn't have a right to take it with my lien. So therefore, even while it's still attached to the land, I have to pay him back for it. If it's not yet ready to be harvested, then it's seen as just an increase of the land, it's a value of the land itself, and I am entitled. Now, again, that's pretty funny. Do I not have to pay Charlie for his efforts? But anyway, but fundamentally, that's just seen as a greater value of the land, not something distinct from the land, and I am entitled to take it. Okay, so then the Gemara says, "1 minute, you can't say that because we know that in practice, Shmuel allows the collection of a lien even if it increased and even if now the wheat is standing at shoulder height." Now that's very strange. Tosfos doesn't like that idea. He says, really? How could that be that the wheat is ready to be harvested and you still have a right to it in terms of your lien? So Tosfos explains Shevach HaMegiel L'Kteifayim in a different way. He says that it basically means something that happened. He says it's sort of like, did you have to put in a lot of back-breaking labor in order to make it? Shevach HaMegiel L'Kteifayim means you didn't. It grew by itself, like what Michael talked about before. You had an orchard and it just rained. That's not Megiel L'Kteifayim. That was like a natural increase, so which makes a lot of sense. Charlie didn't put in any effort. The fruit just blossomed over the course of the year. It rained and the fruit blossomed. I'm not giving him anything for what it increased in his value. That was land I had a lien on with natural growth, and I'm taking it all. Shevach HaMegiel L'Kteifayim, the Shevach came about because of effort and labor. And that Charlie should be entitled to get paid back. And then the Gemara says, 1 minute. But we know that Shmuel allows you to collect even when it required the labor of the person. So how does that make sense? Amalei lo kasha, that's not difficult. The question is, how big was the loan? If Michael owed me $1,500 and the land was $1,000, then even though now because of Charlie's efforts it increased to $500, I'm entitled to seize the whole thing. Okay. Now, but however, if the loan was only $1,000, then I'm not entitled. Which basically means, okay, obviously, if the loan was only $1,000, I'm not entitled to take more than the loan. So that resolution, right? Excuse me. Where the only time I have to pay back Charlie is if I'm really not, if my loan isn't that big. But if the loan is that big, even though the lien was only $1,000, even though the lien started as $1,000, but because I have an outstanding loan of $1,500 and now the land is increased, even though it increased because of Charlie's efforts, still that's my land. It's that the land I had a lien on. Now it's worth the full value of the loan. I'm entitled to take it all. It does seem very unfair. Like, where is Charlie getting reimbursed for his efforts? At least I should have to not give him all the shevach, at least give him something. Wait, let's just get to the end of this and then I'll take the questions. Okay. This idea that, that what do you call it? That I get to pay Charlie off in the case when I have to do that, when it's what do you call it? When the loan was only $1,000. So now I'm taking the whole piece of land and I'm paying him the difference. That makes sense if, according to the one that says that if the purchaser has money, he cannot make me go away. Meaning, let's say I forget whether Charlie increased it or not. I've got a lien on the land. I'm going to seize the land that Charlie brought off of Michael. But Charlie says, look, I really don't want to lose this land. Just take this $1,000. When Michael has to reimburse me anyway, he gave me the insurance or whatever. Take the value, don't take the land. Is he entitled to do that? Or can I say, I'm sorry, you don't owe me $1,000. I have rights to the land. I'm taking the land. You don't have a right to make me go away just by giving me the money. That's a debate. So the Gemara says, let's see how that plays out.
Isn't it, we just had the Bisra versus the Zuzi before?
That's the opposite. That's if I can pay him off for his part. Here's whether he has a right to make me go away.
We don't say that.
Okay, so that's the question. So let's take a look. According to the one that says it's good, if Charlie has the money, lo matzi misalik le labalchov, he can't make me go away, shapir. Then it makes sense, because then this is the flip side of it. I can take the whole land and pay him money, and he can't stop me from doing that, because he wouldn't have a right to make me go away, even if he had money. That makes sense. If Charlie had money, he could make me go away. So now think about it. If Charlie had the money, he could make me go away from the whole land. Now I'm taking the land, and he wants to at least keep his $500 worth of it. It should seem that he should be entitled, since he in general could be able to make me go away had he had the means to do that, right? So why do I get to take the $500 and pay him the money, even if he wants to keep that $500? So the Gemara says, Charlie should say to me, if I had cash on hand, I'd make you go away from the whole land. I'd give you your $1,000 and I'd keep everything. Hashta, now that I don't have money and you took the whole land, which was worth $1,500, since fundamentally I should be able to make you go away, I have some real rights here. At least leave me a plot of land worth my $500. Okay, so it should seem that he should be entitled to do that. Okay, since he has a $500 rights to the land, and since he has a right to make me go away if he had cash, it would seem that the combination of those two means that he could keep a piece of land worth his value. The case is that Michael here, who was the one who owed me money, made this plot of land the apotiki. Apotiki means it is the designated collateral. It's not just I have general liens on all Michael's property. I have focused liens on this plot of land. And what that does is, on the one hand, it weakens my rights to any other property that Michael has, but it strengthens my rights to this plot of land. And because of that, Charlie doesn't have any rights. He can't make me go away if he had money. Okay, so in that case, I can only collect from that. So that's the case where I can make Charlie go away rather than him making me go away. Okay, in a special case of an apotiki. But anyway, the more interesting question here is basically as well a digression of the case about when the Gazan increases the value, can I pay the Gazan and make him go away? And the answer basically was yes. And similarly, if a Lokeach increases the value of property I have a lien on, I seize the property and I make him go away. But the Gemara said that's not so clear, because it actually might be that he could make me go away, or at least he could be entitled to keeping the amount that he has rights to. But the strange thing is the issue about when, according to this, that when even if he increases the value, if that's equal to the value of my loan, I'm able to seize the whole thing, okay, and presumably not even have to pay him anything, which is very strange, because one would imagine I would at least have to pay him for his efforts. Yes, Michael, you have a question?
So according to the Rosh Hashanah, said so let's say he stole this sheep, and he's like, the sheep got really sick, and I had to take it to the vet, and
right,
and then what he put in there was more than, is he capped the value of the sheep? Or to say, like, listen,
one more time, what he put in one more time,
right? Yes, he gets compensated like taking care of it. Let's say he has to do something extraordinary, take it to the vet. It was a big vet bill,
right?
So then, does he get compensated for that, or does he say, listen, your vet bill's $1,000, it's only worth $50?
No, Metzger Shavia is not a portion of what he paid. It's a percentage of the increase. I don't have to pay for the guy. If the guy hasn't spent money and lost money on it, I don't have to reimburse him. Okay, he only gets a portion of the increase.
Okay. But also, I thought that he gets compensated as if he was, shepherd taking care of it during that time, whatever.
No, the message is because that would normally be the arrangement, but it would be a percentage of the increase in value. It would not be a flat fee.
So how do they know if it's mechzer shlish or reveal? That
depends on what the normal what's
going on. So
if
he took it to the vet, then he doesn't get compensated for that at all.
Correct. Now there is a Gemara that talks about in other scenarios of Yod L'Toste Chavero that you're Mashalim also like the normal according to the Yitzia, according to his cost. But there it only says only if it's less than the Shevach. If it's between the Yitzia and the Shevach, you pay the lesser of the two. By the way, Tosfos points out that one of the reasons behind why I might be able to take the entire amount from Charlie and not have to pay him for his costs is because Michael has insured Charlie against loss. So I might as well think what's going to happen. I'm going to take it from Charlie. Charlie now has lost land worth $1,500, $500 of which was stuff that he inputted on his own. But it's not unfair to Charlie because he's just going to go back to Michael, and Michael's going to owe him $1,500 before Michael owed me $1,500. Now he owes Charlie $1,500. So one of the ways to understand why I'm entitled to do that is because Charlie is insured against loss. Okay, but then Tosfos explores the cases about what if Charlie isn't insured against loss? Am I still entitled to do that? Right, but at least it helps explain a little bit about why that works. Okay, let's now continue in the Gemara. Amar Rava. This has got to be, I got to tell you, it's almost like Twilight Zone we're talking here about. Like yesterday or 2 days ago, we were Twilight Zone that the Gazan tries to return and you don't accept it. No, we're not accepting it. Especially if you're a professional Gazan, you don't have to pay back anything, okay? By the way, it was a great example of the case about somebody who's like, it was a case about stealing from everybody and then having to figure out how you pay back. Do people know the story about Crazy Eddies?
Yeah.
About the guy they were these I think it was Syrians or something, whatever it was. Yeah. They had these this electronics store. Anyway, they had
are insane.
I remember their ads. Anyway, there was all these scams going on. I don't remember the story about it. And they were finally caught and put in jail. Anyway, one of the guys really felt tremendous remorse, and he's spent the last 20 years trying to basically figure out how to pay back the public. So he goes around and he lectures about it and whatever. So it's like anyway. But here so we had one twilight zone which was like, oh, you're a professional Gazlan, we can't take any money back. Then you're not going to do tshuva. Now we got this twilight zone that you're a Gazlan and you steal it, but so in order to encourage you to return it, you get rights to the shevach. You get to keep the shevach or portion of the shevach. And now we're going to explore how far do those rights go. So let's take a look. By Rava, so Rava asked, I'm a Rava. Rava said, the Gazlan steals it and then he sells it, or he steals it and then he dies and he bequeaths it. So, and now the Nigzal comes to get the animal back. So since he had rights to the shevach, so now the person who bought it from him or the heir who rescattered from him has rights to the shevach. So the Nigzal gets his sheep back, and the purchaser says, okay, but at least pay me for the wool, because the Gazlan was allowed to keep the wool. I'm allowed to keep for the wool. Okay, now, by Rava asked, let's say the Gazlan stole it, Reuven stole it, and then sold it to Shimon. And now Shimon had an increase in value. And then the Nigzal comes. So Shimon gets to keep the increase in value. Okay? After he raised the question, he concluded, no, this is the classic phrase of the Gemara. The first guy sold to the second guy. He transferred any rights he had. So the same way the Gazlan has rights to keep the increase, the Nigzal has, their Lokeach has rights to keep the increase. Boy, Rava. So then Rava asked, what about if it's a non-Jew who purchased it from the, now we're going to have to see, is it a non-Jew who purchased, or is the non-Jew the Gazlan? But does the non-Jew have rights to the shevach? Okay. Are we going to come and make a takana for the sake of the non-Jew? By the way, the fact that it finally uses the word takana is helpful, because Tosfos until now has been explaining that this is all takanas are shavim, right? To a takana, because why? To make it easy for the Gazlan to do tshuva. The Gemara has not said what the reason is that the Gazlan has rights to the shevach. So here, by using the word takana, discussing the non-Jew case, it seems to indicate that that's what's going on for the Gazlan as well. It's one thing for the Gazlan to give him a takana to let him keep the shevach, but we're going to do it for the case of the non-Jew. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. It's that the non-Jew, presumably we're still speaking, the non-Jew stole it, and then he sold it to a Jew. So now the Jew is the purchaser from the non-Jew Gazlan. Does that Jew have rights to the shevach? I say, but so what? If when a non-Jew is a Gazlan, we don't let him keep the shevach, why should we let the Jew who bought it from him keep the shevach? So the Gemara says, Lo Chicha could go into Gazlan Yisrael. Okay, fine. There are three people involved. A Jew stole it, Reuven stole it, Bizavna the Alei, and then he sold it to Christopher. And then Christopher made it worth more. Okay. Then Christopher went and sold it to Shimon. Okay. So when Reuven had it, he had rights to the shevach. If he had sold it straight to Shimon, Shimon would have had rights to the shevach, but it went through Christopher in the middle. So what do we say? Okay. It started with a Jew and ended with a Jew. So the takana of rights to the shevach still remains, and therefore continues to pass through the non-Jew and goes to the Jew at the end, and he has rights to the shevach. Since the non-Jews in the middle, they didn't take it. We don't know. Fine. Buddha. I'm a papa. Hi, man. Now we're going to switch back.
Even though he's rights to shevach, he still have to pay Abra B'chamisha, though. I mean, if this is the case of.
Oh no, this is Gaza, not Gaza. Good try. Yes.
in this printing, they use the phrase "Ovid Kochavim." Is that unusual rather than
Goy?
Yeah.
Well, it's not unusual. It's usual as a censored word, meaning the original version. Probably what do they have in Steinsaltz? Goy. The original version would have been Goy or sometimes Nachri. Ovid Kochavim is the classic censored word of when
they're changing it back.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, so let me just understand this. And this whole thing we had this before. This Rabbi and this takana was not. It was only for a which Gazlan or
God. Would we have said the same by a God?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question, because I've been pointing out from the beginning that there's some conversations that seem that they should be the exact same, like what type of a shinui is kona or not. Although the Tosfos Rid actually questions that maybe there are different rules about that. But something like this, actually, it makes sense that there might be a difference. Like whether we make a takana, because by the Ganav, Dafka, there's all these fines and punishments. I mean, that's the irony. So like, what's going to incentivize him? But maybe what will incentivize him is to return it so he doesn't have to pay the kefal and the Abba Chamisha because he's motivated. So anyway, but since or another way of saying it is the Ganav the Torah is harsher on. So maybe, for whatever reason, maybe you're right. We make more takanas for the Gazan than the Ganim because we did not see these types of takanas for the Ganim. So that's a very good point, that Michael raises. All these weird takanas of, don't accept it back, let him keep the Shevach. Could be that by Ganav either for whatever reason we're harsher, we don't want to make it, or because of the harshness of the fines, there's more of an incentive for him to do tshuva anyway. It's a good question. Okay, of course we should raise the question, why don't we do the same for a Goslin? Make harsh fines if he's caught, and then give him the way to get out of it by admitting to it. That would be a lot more justice, just than to give him all these like rewards for returning it.
That's because there's no Yura, he doesn't have any Yura of Ebed or Rabbo. Right.
Right.
There was nothing more before.
Yeah, right.
It was a Ganim Goslin.
Right.
So we're more Machmer by Ganim.
Yes, right. That's one way. Right. That's one of the ways of explaining why. There's different ways, but right. The classic way that Gemara explains why Ritar is more Machmer like Ganim is because he's like a hypocrite. He has more year from Bnei Adam than from whatever. Okay. So you're saying if the Goslin doesn't care about Bnei Adam, he's not going to be scared about fines. Right. Maybe. Okay. Amar Papa. Now we switch back though to a normal Shinoi conversation. And when people learn Meruba and learn Shinoi and Meruba, they usually learn this passage here for Rav Papa. Let's take a look. Amar Rav Papa, Haiman de Gazel Dikla Michavre. Somebody stole a palm tree from his friend. Now again, how do you steal a palm tree? You claimed it. The way you're going to steal it is by chopping it down. Okay, and right now it's sort of our carcass, not nixelis. But what you're going to do now is the cutlay, and then you chopped it down. Avagav Deshadya mi Arala Ardide, he fell it from his, from the friend's field into his yard, into his field. That's how he stole it, by chopping it down and it landed in his yard. Okay. Lo Kani, you're not Kona. Now, my time, what's the reason? Mekara Dikla Mikri, Vahashanami Dikla Mikri. Even though you did a Shinoi Masa, it was a Shinoi Masa without an attendant Shinoi Hashem. It was originally called a palm tree, and now it's just called a chopped down palm tree. Now, that's pretty radical, okay? Because first of all, there's a couple of things that are crazy about this. We can't explore all of them. But number one, we just went through all this discussion about like a shinoi, like is a cow after it gives birth a different cow, and is that a shinoi kona? It gets a little fatter, it gets a little thinner. There we consider it. That was like not biadayim, not even a shinoi Hashem, was a little bit of a physical change. Here you chop down a palm tree, all of a sudden it's not a big enough shinoi because we'll still call it a chopped down palm tree.
I would call it wood.
I understand. And anyway, we would assume you would call it a different name. But even so, compared to the earlier discussions, this seems a lot bigger and more radical. It's both biadayim, and we would think you call it shinoi Hashem. That's number one. I don't want to answer that. The other two point is that it sounds like if it was a shinoi, you would be kona. But this is an interesting example of gezela v'shinoi b'ayim ke'echad. Normally, we assume the order is you steal it and then you do a shinoi. But here, while it's still not chopped down, you can't. It's not nigzal, right? You have to be able to make it metaltalin. The chopping of down is the act of the gzela. The Gemara implied that if in that act you did a shinoi, it would be the gzela and the shinoi b'ayim ke'echad, and you would be kona. But it was not a shinoi. Okay. Now the Gemara goes on. Okay.
So no one disagrees with him?
V'hashta, no, we don't hear an opposing opinion. Okay, Dikla v'avdei guvi. Now, if you stole a palm tree or maybe a chopped down palm tree and you turn them into logs, lo kani, you're not kona. Hashtamias guvi didikli mikri. They're called palm logs. Now,
this is specifically to palm trees, I guess, right? It was like a regular tree. It doesn't sound like.
Maybe you're right. Maybe it has something to do with a palm tree. I don't know. By the way, are palm trees the ones that grow, or no, that's banana trees that grow new every year?
Banana trees.
That's banana trees. Okay, because if it would tell me that you would chop down and regrow new every year, you could imagine it wouldn't be seen as radical. Anyway, guvi vavdinu kashuri, if you took logs and made them into beams, finally kani. Oh, now we're kona. Okay, beams are totally different. I mean, it is true. Like you look at the lumber industry, you look out of the forest, they have all these big felled trees and the logs. They're all still somewhat of a natural state. Right? Once they get converted into beams, that's already something different. Okay, now, Kishuri, if somebody stole a beam, Ravravi, Vavdinu Kishuri Zutri, and made it into a small beam, you took a 2x4 and you made it into two 1x4s or something, I don't know. Okay, lo kani, you're not kona. That's just not enough of shinoi. They're just different beams. They're not fundamentally different. Avdinu Ketzutzisa, if however you made it into
like sawdust.
No, Ketzutzisa is a different type of a thing. It's like, I don't know. Boards. Okay, like planks. So that is a 2x4. As opposed to a beam, I guess is much more,
Hey,
substantial.
2x4s turn them into 2x8.
No, but 2x4s are thin, right?
Yeah.
So planks, like as opposed to like a beam, which is more like fully three-dimensional. Okay, then kani, that is different. I'm a Rava. If somebody stole a lulav and turned it into a like a broom, basically you plucked out all of the leaves and you bound it back against the stem, and now it's like a broom. What?
Is that a parakeet?
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, kani, that's already a kinyan. The maker of the liva mikri v'hashta hutzi. Before it was a lulav, and now it's a broom. Hutzi v'avdinu chufya. Now chufya is the broom. I don't know what the hutzi was. But the chufya is okay. The chufya was like the broom, except apparently what you did is you split the leaves into two. So it wasn't just that you detached the leaves and bound it back up, but each of the leaves you sort of split into two. In that case, Connie, how do they translate the difference between chufya and?
They said the first one is leaves that they tore the leaves off the lulav branch.
Right.
In the first one.
Oh, and now we actually bound them back up to it to make
And
it into a broom?
But broom is,
All right, whatever. Anyway, fine.
That
So
is-
you're pulling the leaves off, and then you're binding it back, and then you're splitting the leaves in half. Kani, mekara hutzi. Before it was like leaves, v'hasha chufya. Now it's a broom.
there is an explanation.
Yeah.
It says that when making a broom, the double leaves are split along their folds and tied together to form a broom.
Okay, that's what I said, right? You split the leaves into two. Okay.
Irreversible chain.
Got it. Chufya v'avdei shashura. Now, if you took the leaves and you wove them into some type of a rope, then low kani, you're not kona. Why? My timer, the other saktale. This was the idea that even if it's a radical change, it could be undone, and you could undo the rope and get you back into the leaves. Then that's chozer l'briyasa. V'havei chufya, make it back into this broom. Okay. By Rav Papa. Rav Papa asked. Now this is going to be strange.
It sounds like a
Right, it sounds like it's gonna sound like it. What happens if the tip is cut off? Tashma, number of Masa, number of Yoshua ben Levi, Nitlat Yomes, or no, if the tip is split. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says Nitlat Yomes puzzle. If it's cut off, it's a puzzle lulav. So my love, should we say Huadin Lenechlaka? The same would be if it's split. So since it would be a puzzle lulav, it's a shinoi in your kona. Now I want to say, is this happening on Sukkot? Is it a kosher lulav that you make puzzle? Then I would get that it's a shinoi. But maybe it's not happening on Sukkot. Like, so Rashi says, since it's puzzle for Hilchos Lulav, it's a shinoi. To me, that only makes sense if it's happening on Sukkot. Yeah. Okay? Anyway, so he says, presumably, split is the same as cut off. Well, nitlashani. No, cut off is different. The hachasole, it's lacking. Ikadami, some say Tashmadam or Masan of Rishub and Levi. Nechlakat Yomes Nasik Mishnitlo puzzle. If it's split, it's like it's cut off and it's puzzle, and therefore Shmamina, that's a good proof. And since it's puzzle, presumably you're Kona.
But it's a perfectly good broom.
I understand. Amar of Papa, Haimon de Gazel Afra Mechavre. If somebody stole dirt from the friend, the Avde Levinta, and basically made it into a brick, okay, so you used it and you added whatever you needed to turn it into a brick. Low Kani, you're not Kona. That seems a pretty radical change. My time at the Hadar Mashule Afra, you can crush it and make it back into dust. So this is again the principle of Shino Chozer L'Briyaso. Even though it went a radical change, it would have to go into a radical change to get back. Since eventually it could get back, it's considered Chozer L'Briyaso.
But I still have the option, right, of just giving him other dirt.
No, he still owns it. Now, would he?
What about the Kanas Hashem and all that?
Oh, so he might have to pay for the difference. We're back to the case about like the increased wool. Okay, that's a good point. You might have to pay for the difference. Levinta ve'avde afra. Let's say you stole a brick and you turned it into dust. Kani, you're kone. Maya market. Dioma hadra ve'avde levinta. Well, no, it's chozer also. I can remold it back into a brick. No, hi levinta achrisi. That's a new brick. It's not the same brick. Panim chadash is parolakana. That's considered something new. So the dust is considered the same dust. Okay, but a brick, when you make something new, it's a similar item to the one you stole. Okay, but it's not the same item that one you stole. Yes, Ken, you have a question about that?
I don't know how to make a brick, but you're putting more than dust in there. So when you grind it up,
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Right, like why is it exactly the same? But I guess it has has additives, but it contains the same. It is the same dust plus other stuff. Okay. Anyway, so I don't know. But Amar Papa, if you stole a piece of metal from your friend, and you made it into a coin, lo kani, you're not kona. Now here, by the way, Jenna, presumably you could do this just by minting it without adding anything. My time, because then you could just, flatten it and turn it back into metal and into a non-coin form. However, if you stole coins and you melted them down into metal, kani, then you are kona. Maya Marta, oh, why? I can turn it back into coins. No, that would be a new coin. If you stole blackened coins and you've polished them and made them new, low kani, you're not kona. Because, that's choser l'bria. First of all, to what degree is that a shina Hashem anyway? Is it called something new? It's maybe just called something polished. But anyway, you leave it around long enough, it'll get black again. Chadati v'avdinu shchimi, if you stole new ones and you made them blackened ones, kani, you're kona. Now that's weird. Why? Just polish it. Maya Marta, hada avilu chadati, you can repolish it. Neither yadi shichmai, so can't say this is panim chadashos paralakan because it's not. You're just removing the whatever it is, the rust or what makes coins black.
Silver oxidizes and becomes black.
Okay, so the silver oxidizing or whatever, you just remove that stuff. So you can't say panim chadashos paralakan. You're just revealing the old coin. But the Gemara says no because it's not fully choser l'briyaso. Some of the blackness still remains. You're never going to fully polish it again. Is that true? When I polish my silver, it really looks like you totally get it back to new state.
It looks, but you've actually lost a tiny bit of the silver each time.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's good to have you in here, Charlie. Okay, let's.
Let me just get back to the brick case, right?
No,
So,
yeah,
for a
quickly.
second. So I do compensated for
the
increase. But if I, let's say, put it in my house, then I just
then it'd be like a tchalas hashavim. Okay, zeh klal kol gazam misham kshasa gzeila. Everybody plays based. This is the principle. You all pay based on the value, what it was when you stole it. Lasuy emai. What does this zeh klal come to include? Lasuy had the amar Rav Ilah, and this was mentioned yesterday. God of Klev and Nasa Ayo, Egel and Nasa Shur. You stole a sheep and it became a ram, a calf and it became an ox. Nasa shini b'yodav kna'o. Now it's a shinoi and you own it. And this is from a Geneva case. So if you slaughter and sell it, it's yours. You don't pay 4 and 5. Now, if you might remember, there was that great line in the Gemara in Meruba, wherever it was said back to him, Rachmana litzla midaita didach. Like, what a crazy idea. God should save us from such opinions. And then he said back, Adarabba, God should save us from your opinions. Anyway, here the Gemara quotes without any dispute. Okay, and on the one hand, it's a Shinu Hashem without any Shinu Nasa. It's a physical difference, but not a physical difference that you imposed on it that happened by itself. Okay, and here it is calling it a Shinu. So chopping down a palm tree and turning it into logs, that's not a Shinu. This here is a Shinu. Okay, but anyway, in this case, because you now own it, you just pay the original value, and this is not Shinu Biyado V'Kna'o. Okay. Somebody stole a pair of oxen from his friend. Also, he went and he plowed, plowing. He plowed his field with it. Zara Buzara, and then he planted his land. So he stole some cows, used them to plow and to, plant his field. And then he said, "Thank you very much. I'm going to return the gzela. Okay, I don't have to pay you anything." So Asa, now this was not that the gzela increased. This was he used the gzela to make his land increase. Asa will come to Rav Nachman. The owner came to Rav Nachman. Amalu, Rav Nachman said, go figure out how much the land increased and have the Gazan pay the owner for the increase of the land. This is like the exact opposite of what we've seen before. Before I increase your gzela and you have to reimburse me. Here, I use your cows to increase my land and I have to reimburse you for how my land increased.
Why?
So,
should this be the value of the labor?
So let's take a look. I'm going to Rava. So Rava, the first thing Rava said is, even if that were true, that you have to reimburse the owner for what you benefited, the cows increased the value and the land didn't increase the value, meaning the reason the land is worth more is not all based. If the land is now worth $100 more, it's not that the cows contributed $100 worth of effort, right? The cow might have contributed a portion of what it was, but the land itself was because it led to its increase in value. I didn't say pay for it. I didn't mean to say you'd pay the full amount. Assess the increase and pay for half of the increase. Pay back to the owner. Amalei, sof gzelu. I don't understand. This is a gzela case. And the gzela is returning in its current in its original form. No, you pay based on the way it was, and we've already looked. What that means is, if anything, the owner has to pay you if the gzela increases. So now you use the gzela to increase the land. You're going to have to give him more than you took. No, You only give the guy back the amount that you took. Why are you going to have to give him back the increase in the land? Amarle, he said to him, Lo minucha, haven't I told you, ki asivna bedina, lo semeli midi. When I'm sitting in din, don't talk to me. Okay, meaning, presumably it means don't second guess me. It could mean don't distract me, but it sounds like don't second guess me. Damar Huna, because Rav Huna said, Huna Chavran, Huna, our friend, my colleague, has said a lie regarding me. Okay, this is Rav Nachman talking. Ana v'Shvor Malka, that I, Rav Nachman, and Shvor Malka, who was like the, who is the name for Shmuel. Shmuel is called Shvor Malka. So Achi Bedina. Shmuel Malka was the name of like the Persian head of government or whatever, but Shmuel was very buddy with him anyway, so it was a way of referring to Shmuel. We're like colleagues in din, meaning we are like, we know what we're doing when it comes to cases of Dine Mamanis, okay? Don't second guess me. Hi, Inish Gazlanahu, that guy was an old Gazlan, was a habitual Gazlan, who began to
The exact opposite of everything.
I know, exactly opposite of what we're saying. And he needed to be fined. So technically, you're right. He just should give it back, and he shouldn't have to give back the increase that he received. But he needs some extra slap on the hand. He needs some extra punishment. So I'm going to make it. So again, it's exactly opposite. All this thing is we can go easy on the Goslin. They let him keep the stuff to increase him. And when he's an habitual Goslin, we go even easier on him. And here we find that no, sometimes actually a little common sense has to kick in, and we have to go in the opposite direction. Yes, Charlie.
What has been missing from these sugyo is hefker baked in hefker, which gives the baked in the power to engage.
Well, that's presumably something of what was operating in this last.
That's what I was thinking,
right.
but it's not mentioned.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me just understand. Let's say he wasn't an habitual